I want fresh milk. Give me the chemicals. Give me the preservatives. I hate this. I'm not gonna survive in this country. Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Thank you so much for clicking. As you guys can see on the thumbnail, it's my experiences and things I hated and loved about living in Kenya. So I lived in Kenya for about 1.5 years with my family, and it was the first time I ever lived out of Canada. It was an experience, to say the least. I lived in Mombasa specifically, so we're just going to jump into it, the things I hated and the things I loved about Kenya. So the first thing I hated about Kenya, so we're going to start with the hate, because the things that I loved kind of came later on, the appreciation. So the first thing I hated about Kenya was the heat, the mosquitoes, like everything about the climate was not for me. I'm coming from Toronto, where our summers are barely hot. And in Kenya, it was like the humidity, the heat was just too much for me. And the mosquitoes, I've never been bitten by a mosquito in Kenya. In Toronto. In Kenya, for some reason, they were having a field day with me. I had like mosquito bites where to this day I have scars from the mosquito bites. They were huge pustules, and every single one of them had pus. All my mosquito bites, for some reason. Like I had one on my wrist here, and it was like huge with like pus coming out. My mom had to like soak my hands in Dettol because it looked so infected. And for some reason I was the only one in my family who was getting a reaction like that with mosquito bites, so I wasn't here for it. And then the first thing that I genuinely loved about Kenya was the lifestyle. We were super spoiled. We would wake up in the morning. We had maids or housekeepers in the house, 2 of them, and one was in charge of the cleaning and one is in charge of the cooking. One of them would wake us up in the morning, our breakfast would be ready, and then our shoes for our school would be polished, our uniforms for the school were ironed, we'd wear that, get dressed, we'd leave the house, and our driver would drop us off at school. And then at lunch we'd get picked up, our food is ready, our lunch is ready, we go take our showers, we change into our second pair of uniform, we take the uniform that we had in the morning, we throw it, they wash it for us. Our shoes are polished and ready for us to go. When we're done our lunch, we leave. We're full, we're clean, and we're presentable. We go back to school. And then we come home, our beds are clean, done, made. We take our second shower for the day because it's actually that hot. Oh my god, just thinking about it gives me heat stroke. Okay, so that was an experience. The second thing I hated about Kenya was the hygiene. And I'm talking about just the streets and stuff. Like things weren't really developed the way I was used to in Toronto. And remember, I'm about 12 years old at the time, so for me it makes no sense that my city is developed and another city isn't. Like if people live here, it should look the same, not knowing that things that are underdeveloped. I'm 12. I only know so much. So I'm like, why are these roads half paved? Why is there so much dirty water on either side of the road? Why is that baby half naked running around selling lollipops? I don't like this environment. Everything just looks dirty. It's disgusting. I hated going to the market because the fresh vegetables and fruits would be beside the expired or dirty, rotting fruits and vegetables, and everything would smell. The fish market, the meat market, everything just had such a bad odor, and I wouldn't be able to come to the market. I think I went once with my mom, and I was about to throw up, and I never went back. My mom would have to trick me into going, and I'd cry. Literally, I would cry myself out of that situation. Like, I'm not gonna make it. The second thing I genuinely loved about Kenya though was the snacks. I loved mabuyu, viazi, achari. Those were introduced to me in Kenya. I've never had them outside of Kenya, and they're absolutely amazing. I don't know what mabuyu is specifically, but my description to you would be these little red seeds that are covered in a dry fruit, and it's covered in a fruity powder, like a red powder, or sometimes it's sugary, salty type of powder, and it's delicious. And then achari is dried mangoes cut into thin slices, and it was covered in the same powder, the red powder I'm talking about. Absolutely delicious. Just thinking about it. Anywho, those, and viazi. Viazi is basically fried potatoes covered in this batter that they fry, and then they add this sour sauce, a tamarind sauce to it, and they would put it in a bag. And kids, what they would do, what I watched the kids in my class do, is when it was put in a bag for them, instead of taking it out and eating it, they'd mush it in the bag like this, then they'd rip one of the corners and just suck it out. And when you're a kid, it's very monkey see, monkey do. So I saw them, I ripped it off, and I'd eat it too, just like that. And it was 5 shillings, so super affordable, delicious, amazing. That was the second thing I loved about Kenya. Now, another thing I hated about Kenya was in school, in Toronto, if a kid does something wrong, they flip their bad card, like they have the behavior card, like red, yellow, green, they flip it, or they get an X put on their name on the behavior chart, or they get a call home. In Kenya, if you do something wrong, you stand up, the teacher gets whatever weapon of choice he has for that day, whether it's a ruler, if it's a piece of tire, like the rubber of a tire, or it's a phone cord, and they whip your hand. The culture shock knows no bounds in that situation. I was like, I need to call the Canadian embassy. I need to get myself out of the situation. I remember one time I literally told my teacher, he stood me up and he made me stick my hand out and he beat me. I was like, I'm calling child services. He looked at me and he's like, who? There's no child services here, but you're on your own. Save yourself. And yeah, one time also another situation where my family and me, we skipped an extra day of Eid. We had 1 day for Eid we were allowed to take off, but my mom was like, you know what, let's take 2 days off and prolong our vacation. That week, the beginning of the next week, for a morning assembly, after we sang our national anthem, the principal comes to the front and he's like, everyone who's absent on this day, the extra day for Eid, come to the front of your class. So every single grade, people were coming out. My older sister came out of her line. I was in standard 6 at the time. I got out in front of my line, and then my little sister came out of hers, and my little brother came out of his. Everyone was just at the front. Everyone was missing it. And a lot of the times it was the Mzungus. Side note, Mzungus are what we were named by the teachers at the school at the time. One of the teachers, I remember, Mr. Chinene, so mean. The first day of school was like, what's your name? I'm like, Ikram. I said it as a Canadian, right? I'm like, Ikram? He's like, Ikram? I was like, okay, yeah, you could say it like that. And he's like, okay, listen, Mzungu, this, and this. And from then on, that name, Mzungu, stuck with me. And it means foreigner, basically. So the Mzungus were at the front, and a lot of us, not all of us, and some of the Kenyans were there too, and we were all put upstairs on the roof of the building. The boys were lined up in one area, the girls were lined up in another. They said, take off your shoes and sit down. Like kneel, basically. Get on your knees and take off your shoes. So we're sitting, and our feet are behind us like this, basically, with the socks on. And I'm like, what are we going to do? Just stay here in this position the whole time? One by one, the kids get their feet beat. Are you serious? For a day off? And then my older sister was getting beat. It was her turn. And my sister's not the type to get emotional or get upset or cry, right? She internalizes everything. The vice principal was beating her. He went back and he whipped her foot. And my sister screamed. She shrieked in pain and she started bawling. Seeing that, I was like, I'm not going to be able to handle this pain. The screaming and crying I did, I was like, Sa, it was my mom. I told her I wanted to go to school. Sa, please, And by the way, we have to speak in this accent because when I spoke in my regular accent, my Canadian accent, the Toronto I had, people would mock me. So as a child, you develop this thing where you're not trying to stick out like a sore thumb. So you assimilate as quickly as possible. I picked up that accent so fast. I was like, Sa, it's my mom. Beat my mom. Sa, please, please, I wanted to come to school. A lot of fad coming out of my sister. She was crying. Me and my little sister, we started throwing my mom under the bus. It was her. Call my mom. And then he looked at us and he was like, it was a mix of pity, disgust, and shock. And he allowed us to go downstairs. Mind you, I was crying more than my older sister at that point, and I wasn't getting beat. So I grabbed my shoes and I ran with my socks until I went to my class. And then I went to the class, I put my shoes on and I was laughing and the girls were like, Mzungu, what happened? I'm like, oh my god, everyone was getting beat. And they're like, did you get beat? Why are you crying? I'm like, nah, I cried my way out of it. I wasn't gonna get beat. Not today. Not on my feet. Are you kidding me? I could barely handle getting hit on the hand. The third thing I loved about Kenya was, it was kind of a love-hate relationship. The blackouts, they happened so often. The power would go out randomly. What I hated about them going out was the fact that you could be in the middle of a show and you would... the blackout happened at any time, you would miss whatever it is you're watching. And the cable is already so bad that it's like, I was watching Chuck Norris and it's gone. Like, now how do I know if he won? I know he won because Chuck Norris always wins, but you know what I mean? Like, it's always going out, the blackout. What I loved about it, however, was when the blackout happens, that's when kids get very creative. Like, the neighbors would come together, we would play games, tell stories. And there's this one game we used to do with me and my siblings. We would use the candles that my mom would put on for the lights as a game. Like, we would wait for the candle wax to melt, and we put it on our hand and see who can kind of internalize the pain the longest. Like, we were so weird. Like, literally, we even now, like, if anything ever goes out, like the power goes out, we get candles. We're like, who wants to play the game? Please let me know if anyone else does that, because it's actually so funny. So the blackouts were something I loved. Now, something I hated in Kenya was the cable. The cable was so bad. Like, we had 3 channels, like the basic networks, and for some reason, if there was news on one of the channels, there was news on all of the channels. If there was cartoons playing on one channel, there was cartoons playing on every single channel. And if there was like gospel music playing on one channel, every single channel was playing gospel music. And then we had the random cartoons, like Princess Sherazade. We had the Cartoon Network. The weirdest cartoons would come on I want to say it was KTV, I don't remember, KTN, which was it, Courage the Cowardly Dog, Kids Next Door. Like, I never used to watch those in Toronto. I would watch like Magic School Bus or Recess, but because I only had so many options, I was like, beggars can't be choosers. Courage the Cowardly Dog is my new favorite show, and it low-key became my favorite show after a while. Something I loved about Kenya, the 4th thing, let's see, what is this? Prices. Ooh, I felt like a king in Kenya because my mom would give us 50 shillings every day for lunch. Like, if we wanted snacks or anything, just pocket money. Even though we did come back home for lunch, if we wanted to buy something, every single day we got 50 shillings. So it's like, a drink is 15 shillings. And then the mabuyu that I love eating was 5 shillings. And then viazi snack would be 5 shillings. That's 25 shillings spent, and I've eaten for almost the whole day. And then I'd buy Mr. Big, this bubblegum brand that they had that was so delicious. I loved it. And it was the first gum I had when I came into the country. And I'm going to talk about that in another video. Like, my first night, my first 24 hours in Kenya. Absolute disaster. But I'm going to share that with you guys. That was the first gum I had. Delicious. And it was like, I think 1 shilling. So I could buy 5 of those. And that would take me to what? 30 shillings that day? And I'd have 20 shillings left for the next day. I was balling in Kenya, basically. So I love that. Something I hated in Kenya was this one song in all of the matatus, Red Red Wine. I don't know if that's the song's name, but it was playing every single day, every single hour. At least once an hour, that song would play on every matatu. I'm gonna lose it. I'm gonna lose it. I'm traumatized. Like, I hear that song and I physically feel sick. I hate that song with a passion. Another thing I hated about Kenya, milk is one of my favorite things in the world, but for some reason in Kenya, the way they package their milk is even more weird than Toronto. Like, in Canada, we put it in packets and people laugh at us. In Kenya, they put them in triangle cartons, and then when you open the milk, it already has like chunks in it. Like, why do I have to use a sieve to take out the chunks from my milk? Like, that makes no sense. Why is the milk already yellow? I wanted my chemical milk. My mom was like, oh no, this is fresh milk. I'm like, I don't want fresh milk. Give me the chemicals. Give me the preservatives. I hate this. I'm not going to survive in this country. The next thing about Kenya that I loved, it didn't really introduce me, but it showed me a different style of ugali. I love sor. Sor is basically cornmeal, right? I think in West Africa, the word fufu is used for it. It's the same concept where it's cornmeal. It's kind of like bread or rice or pasta. It's like the staple meal, right? Ugali. And then it's a lot thicker and a lot harder than sor in Somali culture. In Somali, the sor is very like soft and you can use a spoon to eat it. In Kenya, the ugali is a lot harder. Like, I could use it as a weapon if I wanted, but it's so good with sukuma wiki. Sukuma wiki is just spinach, and they make it kind of like a stew with meat, and like so much spinach is in it, and tomatoes, and it's like a very savory dish. It's absolutely delicious. I loved it. I was like, this is something I could eat every day, because the ugali in itself is not that heavy, right? It's hard, but it's not like something if I eat too much I get too full of. And then the vegetables are not too oily. So it was just a perfect meal. We come from school, we would eat that for lunch, and I'd be full and I'd leave. Another dish that they introduced me to in Kenya was pilau. I never knew pilau existed. Like, I'm not cultured, I'm from Toronto. The most exotic thing I used to eat was a fish fillet, you know? So I wasn't really adventurous when it came to trying new foods. But in Kenya, you're kind of forced to, because first off, I have no milk, which means I can't have my cookies. I can't eat cookies and milk because I don't have that. And then I don't have chicken wings. They didn't have really good chicken wing spots either. So my main diet was gone. I had to survive. So I had to eat that. Ugali, sukuma wiki, pilau. What else was I introduced to that I really, really loved? They had Nando's. I'm not a big fan of Nando's, so I don't want to hype that up. I hated Nando's, and I still hate Nando's. It's not a thing. But what was that candy? I don't know, barao. I don't know what it was called, but my neighbor used to make it, and I really liked it. But now I hate it. But at that time, it was one of the foods I used to eat to survive. It's a dessert, but I considered it food sustenance. Okay, the last 2 points I'm gonna make here are my things I hated. Oh, this is just 1 point, sorry. The last thing I hated about Kenya was the limited water supply. Now, to use the hot water, you have to turn on the water heater and let it bring up the water to a boil. If you turn that on and then you go in the shower, that water is not coming for you. It's not meant for you, you know? It's definitely not yours. Somebody else is gonna get that hot water, but you, not destined for it. You're gonna take a shower with cold water. If you want hot water, you need to turn that hot water boiler on and wait 10 to 15 business minutes, and then maybe you'll get it. Maybe you'll get a hot shower. But I'm telling you now, person to person, you will not get hot water if you turn it on immediately. It's not like in Toronto where I just go in the shower, turn on the cold water, turn on the hot water, and I get warm water. No, you need to be patient. And if somebody goes before you and takes a hot shower and you come in and then the hot water is gone, that's because they finished all the hot water. And we were a family of my mom, me, my sister, my brother. 5, 6 people were in the house. If 3, 4 people take a shower before you, there is a 99.9% chance you're taking a cold shower, my friend. Oh, yeah, those were the things that I liked and hated about being in Kenya. It was definitely an experience. I think every single person in this world needs to have an opportunity to travel, to go see the world, because I've definitely gotten a better outlook on the world, learning about how other people live, and yeah, I feel a lot more cultured, you know. Alhamdulillah, I've been given this experience. Not everyone gets that opportunity, but if it was available, I would suggest for everyone to live outside of their own country to see how other people live. Inshallah, I'm going to make more videos about this, about when I used to live in Egypt, and another experience about things I loved and hated about being in Saudi. And please thumbs up this video if you guys enjoyed it. Please let me know in the comment section if you guys have experienced different things about living in Kenya, and if not in Kenya specifically, you can comment about a country that you lived in where you've had different experience, right? Culture shock. So yeah, please share, and thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video, inshallah. Bye bye.